Good afternoon. On this week's episode of Fishwick and Associates Talking Law, we have our founder and owner, John Fishwick, and Daniel Martin, and we're going to be talking about False Claims Act. So, John, with that said, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Absolutely, Zach. Zach, thank you so much. Zach, of course, not the hostess with the most, it's the host with the most. And our firm investigator leading us off, we see there's Judge Daniel, our associate, who's covers lots of legal topics for us at the webisodes and also does a lot of legal research and writing and court appearances on our cases. But False Claims Act are interesting cases that we vet a lot of those. We handle those cases and have some in the office right now. They're called False Claims Act cases. They're also called Qui Tam. That's lawyers like to throw around a lot of Latin terms. Daniel likes Latin terms. But the cases are dealing with fraud. If you work at a company and the owners of the company are submitting false invoices to the company, to the country, for reimbursement, or their healthcare fraud, where they're submitting Medicaid or Medicare claims that are false, anything to kind of steal money from the government, typically the federal government, where companies are involved in stealing money from our government. And we as a country obviously don't want that. We don't want people stealing from the government, because when you steal from the government, you're stealing from us. And so the Congress set up a procedure where you can bring a lawsuit over that. You're what's called a relator. You're somebody who maybe worked there, who knows about the fraud, come to a law firm like us, and we look into it. We vet it. Zach helps us vet it. Others help us vet it, where we look in to see if it's true. If somebody comes to us and says, there's Medicare fraud at this healthcare company, we obviously want to look at the invoices and the billing statements, and maybe they're charging up so that they get paid. Supposed to get paid $100 for something, and they're getting $150 for something, but they do that, over company-wide many times a day. It adds up to millions of dollars. And so it's a good program that's in place. I think both Democrats and Republicans think it's a good thing, and think about that. That's unusual in this country. But basically what you're trying to do is stop fraud in the government. And so somebody who works at a company who knows about fraud will come to us and say, look, this company is ripping off the government. And usually it involves big bucks, lots of zeros, millions of dollars. And we bring those cases. Daniel, why don't you talk to our viewers a little bit about the procedures? They're very different from most of the cases. They're filed under seal. We try to get the United States government to be a party to that lawsuit when we bring them, or whoever brings one of these cases. But why don't we talk to our viewers a little bit about what a relator is, what the role of the government is, and then ultimately what's the role of the court in these cases.
Well, before Daniel starts, I just want to put Daniel on the spot if I can, John, if you don't mind.
That'd be good.
So as you said, Daniel is our resident Latin speaker. So with that, you and I say Qui Tam, but I think, Mr. Martin liked the actual full name. So Daniel, do you want to enlighten everybody with the full name of Qui Tam?
Well, Qui Tam, it does come from the Latin phrase, Qui Tam pro domino rege quam pro se ipso in hoc parte sequitur, meaning in English, he who sues in this matter for the king as well as for himself. And obviously in America, we have no kings, but the federal government is sort of like a king. So we use that in the context of bringing a claim on behalf of the federal government, essentially. And that's what a Qui Tam lawsuit is all about, essentially.
So if somebody wants, Daniel, they could write into you and you could give them what you just said again about the Latin term for it.
I could come up with that.
Impressive. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so go ahead, Zach. You go ahead.
This is also known as whistleblower, correct?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, in the common vernacular, a whistleblower lawsuit is what you would refer to as a False Claims Act lawsuit or a Qui Tam lawsuit.
Okay.
The major difference is that a whistleblower could technically be blowing the whistle, in any number of things, whereas the False Claims Act specifically relates to fraud against the government, the United States government, and there are often, in most states, including Virginia, there are state law equivalents of the False Claims Act if, you're submitting a false claim to the Virginia government, and it's a similar sort of process.
Okay.
But speaking of process, that's what John asked me about, so that's what I'll get to. So as John mentioned, in a Qui Tam lawsuit, there's not a plaintiff, there's a relator. And a relator is someone who relates the fraud that's going on at his or her place of employment, typically, although technically doesn't have to be the place of employment. That's the typical context where a Qui Tam case arises. And so they relate that information to the government. Now, they'll first relate that information to us or whoever's, whatever lawyer who's representing them, and the lawyer will sort of, they'll kind of vet those claims and, see if there's anything worth bringing to the government. And at that point, before filing a lawsuit, which is under seal, as John mentioned, you'll submit a document to the government that sort of outlines, what the evidence is, what the false claims are, to kind of give the government a heads up, because in this kind of case, the government is really, your ally. You want to be on the government's side. You want the government to help you. And so when you file the lawsuit under seal, that'll give the federal government, an opportunity to kind of review the claims and gather evidence and all that. And they have a time limit, which can often be extended. It can often go on for, a year or more before the lawsuit kind of, gets out into the open like a typical lawsuit would. And during that time, they'll be, investigating the claims and talking to people and really trying to make a case. And the relator, they're involved in the lawsuit, of course, because they're the ones who are relating this information.
Yeah, so I think that, Zach, the bottom line is yes, these cases are more complicated. We deal with a lot of complicated cases, but at its core, a False Claims Act case or a Qui Tam case, or that long Latin phrase that Daniel used, bottom line is the core of it is cheating the government out of money, which means that you're cheating we, the taxpayers, out of money. And so I think most people view it as a very good thing. And so both Republicans and Democrats, their administrations have been behind these cases. They think it's an important thing. I know when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Zach, we had a number of those cases. I always view these cases as very important cases because you're rooting out fraud, and at the end of the day, that's good for a lot of people. And so I think that's a good overview, Daniel, of these cases and the tricky side of them.
One other thing, if you're watching this video and you're thinking, well, what does the relator get out of this? If the government's the one who's been defrauded and they're recovering money, well, the relator essentially gets a cut of whatever the government recovers, which varies depending on the government's involvement in the case.
Absolutely.
And I think it's what you're talking about, John and Daniel, everybody can relate to. It goes back to the old adage of the $50 hammer. When people know they get those government contracts, though the hammer may only cost $5, they're going to tack on that additional $45 and pocket it in the end.
Right.
That one might be before my time, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, we'll save my comments for next time.
All right. Well, Zach, thanks for hosting us today. Daniel, thanks for your participation, and I hope our viewers enjoy this. It's an interesting area of the law, like so much of the work that we do.
And absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you very much.